In Fresno, back in 2003, my family and I rented a house near Chestnut and McKinley. We couldn't believe how cheap the rent was, so we signed a 1-year contract. But from the very beginning, something felt eerie about the place. There was an empty closet in the house that we never used because it smelled awful, and there was a strange red stain on the carpet floor inside it. The owner insisted it was just red paint, so we kept that door shut at all times. Oddly enough, some nights we would hear knocking from inside the closet. When we opened it, there was nothing there, just as we expected. One evening, while playing hide-and-seek with my 4-year-old son, he suddenly burst out of the closet, screaming and crying, claiming there was a man inside trying to grab him. When I checked, the closet was empty, the lights were on, and there was no one to be found. Then, one night, as I was going to the kitchen for a glass of water, I saw a man wearing Hmong traditional clothes, slowly walking from the kitchen and disappearing into the scary closet near the hallway. I was frozen in shock and quickly ran back to my room. When I told my parents about it the next morning, they dismissed it, thinking I was just seeing things. However, when the owner's daughter came to collect the rent one day, my mom couldn't resist asking if anyone had died in the house before. The owner's daughter hesitated, but eventually shared a secret with my mom. She explained that her brother had taken his own life in the house. It was during the Fresno Hmong New Year when he was about to get ready to go to the New Year. He was angry because their parents had forbidden him from dating a girl with the same last name. He got so bad that he hung himself in that very closet while still wearing his Hmong clothes. They claimed they would often see his spirit wandering around the house, but instead went back to the closet. After hearing this story, we were all shocked and mad at the same time that the owner was trying to hide that from us. Weeks later, my family continued to witness this ghostly figure moving about the house, as if he were preparing for the Hmong New Year, but always ending up back in the closet. We couldn't take it any longer and decided to call the owner. Surprisingly, they understood our predicament and released us from the contract. We felt immense relief after finally moving out of that terrifying house. My haunted house story began when my husband and I bought our first home in Fresno, California. At first, everything seemed just fine, like any regular house. But it didn't take long for things to start getting strange. A few weeks after moving in, I began hearing weird noises, like someone softly humming in the restroom. I didn't think much of it at first, attributing it to the old pipes or something like that. But as the days passed, the humming grew louder and more distinct. It was eerie, like a haunting melody that seemed to come from nowhere. One night, in the middle of my peaceful slumber, I felt something tickling my feet. I was half asleep and groggy, so I thought it might be my husband trying to play a prank on me. But when I opened my tired eyes, I saw a shadowy figure darting away into the darkness of our bedroom. It was so fast that I couldn't make out any details, just a dark silhouette fading into the night. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I told my husband about the humming and my strange encounter, and he confessed that he had been experiencing odd things too. He mentioned hearing footsteps in the hallway when no one was there, and the sensation of someone watching him in the shower. Things took a turn for the worse when my brother-in-law's family moved in with us temporarily. Their young son, Timmy, claimed to have seen a lady in the restroom. He described her as a pale, ghostly figure with long, flowing hair that covered her face. Timmy was terrified and refused to go near that restroom again. We were all at a loss for what to do as the eerie occurrences continued to escalate. Every night became a nerve-wracking ordeal, and we couldn't find any logical explanation for the supernatural events that plagued our home. As the strange occurrences in our haunted house continued to escalate, our fear grew stronger, and we felt trapped in our own home. One night, it reached a chilling climax. I awoke to the sound of whispers, hushed and sinister, coming from the restroom. My husband was still asleep beside me, oblivious to the eerie voices. I mustered the courage to investigate. As I approached the restroom, the whispers grew louder and more menacing, like a chorus of angry spirits. I hesitantly pushed the door open, and inside I was met with a bone-chilling sight. The dim light in the hallway shows the pale lady was crying in the shower with the curtain half open. Her hair covered her face. Her eyes were empty voids, and her voice echoed through my mind, filling me with dread. With trembling hands, I turned and ran back to our bedroom, waking my husband in a panic. We decided right then and there that we couldn't stay in that house any longer. We had to leave, no matter the cost. The following morning, we contacted a real estate agent and told them about our experiences. They agreed to help us sell the house, but finding a buyer who was willing to take it off our hands proved to be a daunting task. We had to lower the price significantly, and even then, the house stayed on the market for months. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we found a buyer willing to purchase the house at a rock-bottom price. We were eager to be rid of it, even if it meant taking a financial hit. As we drove away from the house for the last time, a sense of relief washed over us. We had escaped the haunting, but the memories of our time in that house would forever haunt our dreams. It was a chapter in our lives we were glad to leave behind, but the scars it left on our souls would remain. I used to live in a small, creepy house in the countryside near Fresno, California. The place always felt eerie, like it was hiding secrets in its creaky old walls. It was the kind of house you'd expect to see in a scary movie. One chilly autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I decided to take a walk around the cornfield that stretched out behind the house. The cornstalks whispered and rustled in the breeze, and I couldn't resist the temptation to explore. As I ventured deeper into the cornfield, my heart raced with each step. The moonlight was my only guide, casting eerie shadows on the tall corn. That's when I saw a figure, a Hmong woman, standing in the middle of the field. Her traditional dress was tattered and dirty, and her long black hair hung down over her face, hiding it from view. I froze, unable to move or speak. The woman just stood there, her presence sending shivers down my spine. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. Instead, she started to drift slowly toward me, her feet not even touching the ground. My heart pounded in my chest as I stumbled backward, trying to escape the approaching figure. The cornstalks seemed to close in around me like they were trying to trap me. Panic set in, and I ran as fast as I could, not daring to look back. When I finally reached the safety of my haunted house, I slammed the door shut and locked it, gasping for breath. I peered out the window, and to my horror, I saw her standing inside the cornfield and slowly walking backward and disappearing. I couldn't explain what had just happened, but I knew I had encountered something supernatural that night. From then on, I never ventured into the cornfield again. The haunting image of the Hmong woman still sends chills down my spine, and I can't help but wonder what secrets that eerie countryside house was hiding. It was a place where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and I was determined to keep that darkness at bay. I used to live in a spooky house in Fresno, California. It was an old, creaky place that always gave me the creeps. The scariest part was the basement. I'll never forget the night when things got really terrifying. One chilly evening, as I was watching TV in the living room, I heard a strange noise coming from the basement. It was a loud, rhythmic banging, like someone was trying to break free from inside the basement door. My heart raced, and I froze in fear. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but the banging continued, getting louder and more persistent. It echoed through the entire house, making the floorboards shake. I couldn't ignore it any longer. With trembling hands, I slowly made my way to the basement door. The dimly lit hallway felt eerie, and the shadows danced around, making me uneasy. As I got closer to the door, the banging grew even louder, as if something or someone was desperately trying to get out. I reached for the doorknob, my fingers shaking uncontrollably. When I finally mustered the courage to open the door, A freezing gust of air hit me, and I could see my breath. The basement was pitch black, and I could only hear the eerie sounds of whispering voices. As I descended the creaky stairs, the voices grew louder and more menacing. They seemed to be coming from all around me, as if the very walls of the basement were speaking. I shivered and felt an icy hand brush against my shoulder, sending a jolt of terror through my body. In the darkness, I stumbled upon an old, dusty mirror. When I looked into it, I saw a reflection that was not my own. It was a twisted, sinister version of me with hollow eyes and a malevolent grin. I gasped and turned away, but when I looked back, the reflection was gone. I knew I had to get out of that basement, but as I tried to climb the stairs, the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me in that nightmarish place. The banging on the door grew louder and more furious, and I could hear sinister laughter echoing through the basement. In a panic, I searched for another way out and found a small window near the ceiling. With all my strength, I managed to squeeze through it and tumble into the backyard. I ran as fast as I could, not daring to look back at that haunted house. To this day, I can't forget the terrifying experience of my haunted house in Fresno, and I hope that no one else ever has to endure the horrors that lurked within its walls.